Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. My name is Jean Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. Today, since it's the holiday season and a time to be merry and joyful, I thought I would do a light-hearted, airy, and, dare I say, fluffy episode, and I'm calling it The Science of Popcorn. But I want to mention something of a more serious nature first. And before I do that I am only passing on the information and giving you the sources where I read it so you can read it for yourself. It is in no way meant to substitute for the vaccines or any other treatments for COVID-19. And I am not promising that it will either cure or reduce the symptoms if you have COVID. I am just passing on the information. So, while buzzing around the internet, I came across information that reports this. People with severe bouts of COVID, either those that died or were on ventilators, seem to be deficient in vitamin D. So I checked my usual sources for stuff like this and came across 2 articles that I will put in the show notes. The first was from the journal Science, and the other was a PubMed NIH article. By the way, in these articles, for a little background, they refer to COVID as Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, or SARS, coronavirus 2. We call it COVID-19 because scientists first discovered it in 2019. Now, COVID is like a parasite in this sense. It cannot metabolize substances for energy without the help of a host, in this case, us. It has to attach to one of our cells, the host, get inside, and then use our metabolites to replicate, and eventually destroy the host cell. In order to get inside, the virus has to attach to a receptor, like a lock and key. The receptor protein that the virus lets in here is called angiotensin converting enzyme, or ACE2. So, because this wasn't our first exposure to a SARS type of virus, researchers are already thinking that if they make this receptor protein but change it so it doesn't work, then the virus won't be able to get in. In other words, a decoy that doesn't work. Here's a quote from the Science article. Quote, "A soluble version of the receptor is being explored as a therapeutic." End quote. So the biotech engineers are trying to put together a version of this, but not work in the sense of allowing the virus to enter the cell. But it gets more interesting than that. Vitamin D does more than just build strong bones. Vitamin D binds to the same ACE2 binding site as COVID-19. 2 important functions of vitamin D are related to blood pressure and T-cell activation. Since this scientific discovery from these 2 articles is worth a deep dive, I'll do a podcast episode on vitamin D and the virus in the future. But let's get back to the popcorn. Now, popping corn grows on a cob, just like our regular corn, and it looks pretty much the same. But this one variety, called Averta, is the only one whose kernels pop when they're heated. This variety has an outer hull, or shell, that is thicker than the hull of regular sweet corn. Below this outer layer, or hull, there's a starchy layer that contains a bit of moisture, unlike the regular sweet corn. When the popcorn kernels are heated to about 400 degrees Fahrenheit, the water turns to steam, causing increasing pressure, and it builds up and explodes, i.e. pops. Now, for reasons I don't understand, because corn cobs are organic and should break down, excavations in Peru seem to have dug up corn cobs from popping corn over 3,000 years ago. And in this country, there have been reports that excavations in New Mexico may have found corn cobs from about the same time. This was all pre-Netflix. Now, the Native Americans associated with the Iroquois group of tribes, which would be Oneida, Cayuga, Mohawk from New York, popped their popcorn in pottery jars. Since that is more recent, we've got a pretty good idea that that's what they did. The first settlers did the same thing over open fires or wood-burning stoves. Then back in 1890, a candy store owner built a corn popping machine, and it was dragged around in a horse-drawn cart. During World War II, sugar rationing helped to make it a popular snack because it only required heat and salt. It was inexpensive and yummy, and still is. Now, a word of caution for the DIY people out there. Attempting to grow popcorn in your garden will take some effort for a very low yield usually. And you don't want to grow sweet corn and popcorn on the same field because they will cross-pollinate and make a mess out of things. But if you're still interested in growing your own popcorn, I suggest you read up on it first because there is some science behind it. We attempted to grow it once as a kid, and we ended up with 1 pot of popcorn from our entire harvest. As for varieties of popping corn, you may want to start with the heirloom yellow popcorn. There are some fun varieties, like the multicolored or carousel, but that may be for more experienced popcorn growers. Eden Brothers sells this popcorn online, but let's assume you are buying the popcorn. There are a few brands of organic popping corn for the microwave. There is a brand called Quinn, which is pricey and has gotten mixed reviews, mostly because of the oil they use in the kit. Then there's the Paul Newman brand of organic popping corn for the microwave, but it is $35 and contains palm oil. Now, palm oil, as you may know, contains saturated fat, which I honestly can't recommend. Whole Foods has a 365 brand of organic microwave popping corn, which is only about $1 per serving, but again, has palm oil and salt. My recommendation is to buy the popcorn kernels from a reliable organic seller. You can either microwave them by putting them in a paper lunch bag, folded over twice, or preferably pop them over the stove with an organic, light-tasting cooking oil. The brands of popcorn kernels I recommend are the ones I've actually tried and enjoyed, but there are other brands out there that could be fine as well. By the way, I'm not benefiting financially from these recommendations. I've just tried them and liked them. The one I normally use when available is Bob's Red Mill White Organic Popcorn. Also, Trader Joe's brand of organic yellow popcorn, and Orville Redenbacher's original organic yellow popcorn. If you really want to buy the already popped popcorn, there is a brand called Public Goods, which is completely organic, vegan obviously, gluten-free, but all corn is, and non-GMO. It's only $2.75 for a bag, but it is mailed to you, so not completely fresh. Better than supermarket, however. Nutritionally speaking, a 1-ounce serving, about 1/5 of the bag, contains 140 calories, 3 grams of fiber, and 8 grams of fat, because it has the added oil. If you're buying the kernels and popping it yourself, here are the nutrition facts for 3 cups of air-popped corn. 93 calories, 3 grams of protein, 18 grams of complex carbohydrates, 3.6 grams of fiber, that's actually excellent, and 1.1 grams of fat. That's because it's a whole grain and there's a little fat in the germ layer. You can store the popcorn kernels in a cool, dark, dry location for up to a year. Now I'm going to recommend that you pop them with an organic light cooking oil, which will add to the calories, but I'm not one that recommends that you count calories. I usually recommend just cutting down on portion sizes with foods that are dense in calories, and popcorn is definitely not. Now, here is my scientific methodology for making popcorn. In this case, on the stovetop. Get a big saucepan with a matching lid and preheat 3 tablespoons of organic vegetable oil. I would use medium to high heat for this. Now I have an electric stove, which I set at 8 on a 10-point dial. But before I start the heating, I put 2 or 3 kernels of corn in the oil, then cover the pan. Having made this mistake once, you may want to find the lid for the pan prior to putting the kernels in. You don't want to take your eye out with the flying kernel. The best oils to use have a high smoke point. That would be safflower oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil. And I recommend that you buy the organic oils and keep them in the cabinet or even the refrigerator, away from light and heat. A long time ago, I used to work in R&D at the Wishbone Labs, and I was told that the soybean oil starts to go rancid after a week. Okay, so you put the lid on, and then start shaking by sliding the pan back and forth over the burner, not lifting it. So this will keep the oil hot, but won't burn the oil by letting it sit. I may be accused of being what SNL might call the anal retentive chef, but in this instance, I plead guilty as charged. When the 2 or 3 kernels of corn you started have popped, add about a 1/3 cup of popcorn kernels. Immediately put the lid on the pot and continue to move the pan back and forth, moving both kernels and oil. Continue to shake and pop until the pops are 5 seconds apart, and immediately put the pan on another burner. Now, is this the anal retentive chef method of making popcorn? Yes. Does it make great popcorn? Yes. If you prefer getting the organic kernels and using the microwave, here's what you do. Mix 1/3 cup of popcorn kernels with 1 tablespoon of the light organic oil. Add the kernels and oil to a brown paper bag. Add salt if you like. Fold over the top of the bag 2 times and give it a good shake. Cook for about 2.5 minutes or until the pops are 5 seconds apart. Now, if you prefer a sweet popcorn and want to make your own caramel corn, you can always do that. But FYI, the recipe for 5 quarts of popped caramel corn calls for 2 sticks of butter, 2 cups of brown sugar, and 1/2 cup of corn syrup. Suddenly not so healthy. So there you have it. The science of popping corn. So we can curl up in our modern homes with central heat, Netflix, and we don't have to worry about those nasty things they had in the old days, like smallpox or the Black Plague, or any pillaging by warriors wearing helmets with horns. Hard to imagine. Anyway, be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.